Yes, hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel and podcast that celebrates Celtic's worldwide fan base and brings a few of us together. Now, before I introduce everyone, I just want to say this is our first time using new software. I know it probably looks and feels quite similar to you, but that's not the case from my end. I'm like a helicopter pilot who's been put into a different helicopter and told to fly it, so I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. But anyway, we'll give it a bash. Hello to everyone who's in the chat already. But let's say hello, first of all, to our participants. Let's start with Ian in Cymru.
Yeah, Cymru, yeah. Wales in English, but I thought since I was logging into this new software, I couldn't remember what I had previously, so I put it on, but I'm good. I don't know if I would want to be in a helicopter with someone who is flying a helicopter for the first time, so yeah, let's see how it goes. I was going to make a morbid joke. I should not. I will move on.
Okay, now people in the chat, let us know if anything needs altered. You know, we're talking people's audio level, stuff like that, because this is all very new to us, but new and exciting, Brian, isn't it?
Yeah, Gav, I was just getting used to the last technology, so bit of a Luddite, but no, it's good to see everybody.
And it's good to see Paul, as ever, in the top right. How's it going, Paul, in Perth?
Good, Gav. Bit of heat here today. We tipped up towards 30 degrees today in early spring. So yeah, but just to not make people feel too bad, it's going to be like 17 degrees and piss and rain tomorrow. So still a bit up and down. But yeah, it's good. Good to be on.
Very good. Well, hello to everyone in the chat there. Monty's worried he might get banned, like he has from other channels. Well, nobody gets banned here unless they're particularly annoying. I did have to put Monty in the sin bin once because he was overstepping the mark, but all is forgiven. All is forgiven. All right, so what are we going to talk about? Well, it looks like this. First of all, yes, the new look and feel. I've set it all up so it doesn't look and feel that different. I mean, if you didn't know, maybe watching at home, you wouldn't pick up on it, but like I said, it's all different from our end. So we're using Restream, not StreamYard. StreamYard put their prices up by over double overnight with no option to do anything else. Ian recommended I contact them and say, listen, I don't want to pay this much because software as a service, people sometimes agree to that, to no avail. Thank you, Ian, but didn't work. All right, so we're on Restream. Makes no difference to you. This is all... as somebody described it when they saw me going online over the weekend by accident, it's like seeing behind the curtain, seeing the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain and not liking what they see. So we'll just pretend that everything's tickety-boo. We're going to talk about the mood in the camp, in the Celtic camp, and then preview the St Johnstone game and just a little bit of Celtic socials, not too much, because we don't want to overburden ourselves with videos and clips and photos and things like that until we're a bit more comfortable. So, speaking of comfortable, are we all sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. The mood in the camp. All right. So now that the dust has settled on the Falkirk game, are we all cool with Brendan? I don't know if you were all watching on Monday or not, but I was quite surprised with the level of emotion directed at Brendan's choice of starting lineup by the other guys on Monday. Paul, are you down with Brendan, or are you still seething that he would dare to make so many changes?
Well, I was never seething that he would dare to make so many changes. I was a bit surprised. Obviously, we did the preview show last week, and I think there's three of us that were on. Obviously, we touched on the game prior after I did detailed analysis on Bratislava, which did take up much of the show, but I'm on record as saying I only thought he would make 3 or 4 changes. That's what he always does. And I know there was a lot of people in the support that said we want to see wholesale changes until they saw wholesale changes and then they weren't happy. But Brennan's since come out and said he wouldn't normally do that. And he didn't. A lot of people reported saying he made a mistake. He admitted he made a mistake. Now, I didn't read the comment. I don't think he was that explicit in the comments I saw. He just said he'd made a lot of changes. He wouldn't normally do that. And in future, he probably wouldn't do that again. He made another comment along the lines of he would usually make only one change in each bank of 3. So he might make one in the defense, one in the midfield, one in the attack, and that would be plenty, which is back to that sort of 3-ish. I had no issue with it because even though it wasn't what I expected, there was enough firepower on the bench to fix it if it didn't work, which it didn't. But just as easily, and what he'll have been hoping is he gives some of these guys a go. Yes, it would be a little bit disjointed. It wouldn't likely fire on all cylinders. But the best case scenario is that players slot in, they know the system, they have a pretty good game, and the cavalry isn't required. That's the ideal situation. Didn't happen. He'll probably be a little bit disappointed in certain people that didn't happen, but he's learned a lot from it. But he always had the cavalry up his sleeve. 30 minutes on the pitch. They blew Falkirk away. They didn't have to play 60, 70, 80 minutes, 90 minutes, and they still got the job done. So I've got absolutely no issues with what he did. If there's a time to do that at any point, it was in that game.
Absolutely.
We are, we all know we've got to win every match. That's an expectation at Celtic. But we're now and a lot of people said, it showed that we don't have the depth that we thought we did. Now, I don't necessarily believe that. Like, some of these guys playing their first game, 6 of them making their first start in the season, and some of them making their absolute Celtic debut. So, yeah, I've got no issues with it. Doesn't block Brennan's copybook at all in my eyes. It tells you how strong some of the bench is. It tells you that some of those players on the fringe have let themselves down, and it tells you others are only just entering into the squad and, will get better over time as they settle in.
Yeah, I agree with that largely. Brian and Ian, anything to add to that? Or is Brendan?
Well, he's got a squad of 25. He can only play 11 people on the pitch. So it was a great opportunity. He had to do it, and I wouldn't be throwing anyone under the bus. Look at Kuhn's first couple of games last season. You were like, oh, we've spent 3-4 million on this guy and he's rubbish. They all have to take that. It takes time. Like any organization, any business, any team, you can't make 8 changes and then just expect everything to be hunky-dory. Palma's the only worry for me. I just think his decision-making and his football intelligence leaves a lot to be desired, and I think he's maybe checked out. Trusty and Vai. Yeah, well, look at Vai. He helped. He the first goal, not the first, the Bernardo goal. He was heavily involved in that, and Trusty just seemed a wee bit nervous. But they have to play. You know what I mean? They have to play. I'm surprised Home didn't get a substitute appearance. Just wondering what's going on with him. He might be destined for a loan move somewhere. Ian, over to you, my friend.
Where am
No,
I?
I mean, what are you saying, Gav? You're hidden behind.
You're behind the fan.
The pilot is now blind.
Yeah.
That is not ideal, is it?
Yeah, the helicopter's going to crash.
No, I think.
Oh, that's quite good.
Oh, that's quite cool. Yeah.
That's better. I agree. I think the amount of changes shocked us all. That's fine. I think to get it in a game that we win, I think is good because I don't think he's going to do it again. So I think we've got that out of the way. I kind of had a bit of apprehension when they were talking up Falkirk and the way they play, because I thought if we're going to struggle against anyone, there's probably going to be someone that's composed, even if they are like a lower division down. So the ones that let us down the most, I was really disappointed in Hatate. I'm a big Hatate fan, but disappointed in him. I thought he really kind of didn't perform well. And same as you, Brian, Palmer, the thing that epitomised it for me was, we've got Vai at the back and it's his first game and he kind of needs that almost steady hand. And for Palmer to be lazy, poor in decision-making, the thing that annoyed me the most, and I'm going to sound like a proper old Celtic dad here, is the flicks. When he did the flick and then Vai did the flick, and I thought, oh no, he's passing on to Vai that, we shouldn't be doing flicks at 2-1 down to Falkirk. It was just stupid. And in the same way that I've spoken previously about Cantwell and how Cantwell didn't really understand the environment he was in, I don't think Palmer understands the environment he's in. I think he thinks he's made it, and I don't think he's got the fundamentals of what it takes to be a Celtic player mentally. And I know I'm concentrating on that one little thing. We know his decision making's bad, but they're doing the flick at 2-1 down against Falkirk fundamentally shows there's an issue with him. And for me, being there for 18 months, whatever he's been now, doesn't look good for him. Does not look good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big supporter of his, initially, and I still think he's got bags of skill. And what I always said was, surely he can be coached to produce what we want him to produce. Why can't he be coached to produce what we want him to produce?
I don't think that's coached, Gav. I think that is an attitude problem, and I'm not sure if you've got someone it's ingrained in their attitude. I'm not really sure how much coaching you can do out of it. I think Rodgers is saying, here are your opportunities. And if he's not taking those opportunities and doing those things, I think Rodgers is going to go, well, we've got the squad now to maybe we don't have the squad to get rid of him because we're looking at that boy from Hammarby. But, maybe it's escalated now because he's been so bad.
Brian,
do you still have grace for Palmer?
I just think he could be another Gravison. He just doesn't do what he's told on the pitch and just tries to. I just don't think if you look at our Champions League performances last year, and he was involved in a couple of them. I just don't think he's Celtic level. I think we wanted him to be good. We're that desperate last year. Have anybody a shining light. I just think he's. Coming in with a baseball jacket and getting the bus into town, you know what I mean? It's sort of
right, outdying me here.
You know what I mean? Like what the? It's like he's peaked. There's the likes of Engels. Engels will move on, and we have a significant number of players that will do better in other leagues down the line. He's living the dream. He's the Mr. Honduras. When he was on the he's probably next to what was the guy played left back for us twice?
He's Aguirre.
He's Aguirre. He's the new star poster boy for Honduran football, but he's not good enough. It has to be up there, and the Brendan's all about upstairs. And look at Liam Scales. If you look at the two of them compared to Liam Scales' attitude, his work rate, his professionalism, where this guy just seems to be. Here have won a lot. He's like a football. He's very gifted. He's very gifted. He's great technique and all the rest of it. But he's not going to go somewhere and make it big. This is him peaked, and we need players hungrier than that.
Is Trusty hungrier than that? Do we think? And he had a few wobbles in the game. Didn't look great. Wasn't great for the first goal. But
it's a kind of
it annoyed me last year how everybody ruled out Kuhn after 10 seconds.
Yeah.
What I'd say, Gav? I listened a few weeks back to Hamish had a guy on from Sheffield Wednesday or Sheffield United.
Sheffield United,
Sheffield United. And he was talking about him being a confidence player and maybe needing to bed in and settle in. And I don't think that game helped him. Anyone who is a confidence player, you've got the young Barcelona kid beside you, Stephen Welsh, who's off it. I think it was just maybe not the best environment for him to start. I think it would have been completely different if he'd had a Scales alongside him or a CCV or even had Taylor beside him. So, again, this is the thing, I wouldn't be writing off Valle because I think Valle really struggled and I was surprised to see him come out for the second half because he was getting a real lesson in the physicality of Scottish football.
He sure was.
And the problem was Palmer was not helping him. I wasn't saying he wasn't good enough, but Palmer wasn't helping him. So I think Palmer, Hatate, those were the disappointing ones. I think Hatate's got more than enough in the bank. I think Cal McGregor was off it. I think Bernardo actually played that well that Hatate might now drop out. I don't know. But as far as writing people off, Valle and Trusty get passes for me. Ida even gets a pass for me because he was trying to do some of the right things. They just weren't finding him. and it was difficult to form those links. He's used to, if he saw the ball go out in the left, Maeda, he knows exactly what sort of positions he's got into. Palmer, no one knows what he's doing, which then puts doubt in that front line as well.
Yeah, no, Paul, Brendan after the match, he was talking about how, or maybe not even before the match. In fact, he was talking about, well, we've got some new players in, we've strengthened the team. There's still other areas we want to strengthen. Then we talk about what we learned from that game. And as you mentioned, a lot of people saying it proves we don't have much strength and depth, or as much as we thought. I've heard some people saying it's only in midfield we have strength and depth. So Brendan talked about future improvements to come. Where do you think he means specifically?
Well, there's a few areas you could question. The midfield is strong. You've got five for 3 positions if we include McCowan. I still think there's a player in home, but he's 6 out. He's 6 going into 3, so we're not going to see him very much. If that's going to stay the case and we don't get any injuries, I want to see him out on loan in January to somebody where he can get minutes and really try and kick on, because there's an absolute player in there. He plays head-up football. He's good in the half-turn. His passing's good. He just needs game time and get confidence up and sort of push himself from 6 to maybe 4 or 5 and get more game time. But that's clearly not going to happen with the current squad. So I agree the midfield's the strongest. Through the middle, we're good. You don't really, maybe you might find an 18, 19-year-old that can put pressure as Kyogo and Ida are effectively 2 number 1 strikers. That's what Roger said. So, he gave Vata there was a contract for Vata to be the number 3 and he turned it down and he went to Watford. Fair enough. So there's probably a spot for a third striker, but that, it's probably not absolutely crucial. For me, the wings are still an issue. Forrest, obviously, we thought his career was done and he's had a bit of a renaissance, but he's currently our third choice winger, for on both sides, which, if he's the next cab up the rank, as good as he's been and he has lifted his game, you probably want strength in the wingers. I agree with the guys. Palmer's not it. I've said elsewhere, I think he's a 10. We don't play with a 10. A 10's a luxury in our system, so he doesn't fit the system. He doesn't have, I agree with Steve, he doesn't have the pace that we need for this team in a winger, and he hasn't got the work rate and the defensive capability to get back and support the fullback. Night and day between him and Maeda. So I'd be looking for another winger. Maeda and Kuhn have got those places down, hands down. Yang, for me, has jumped the queue ahead of Palmer on the left. Palmer, for me, is done. I'd be very surprised to see him get much game time, and I expect him to be on his way in January. So I'd expect to see another one come in, maybe even 2, because do you really want to be going with just 4 for those 2 key positions? Not so sure. You probably want 5 into 2. Beyond that, you're looking at fullback cover. Vi is only a temporary option, so we'll see. I think he showed enough technically that he's obviously a really good player, which you don't get to Barcelona if you're not. I was surprised at his physicality for a guy who's, I think, 5'11". His physicality was reasonably poor, but he's a young lad, and we've seen people sort of come through there. That's nothing you can't fix. Whether it'll be fixed in a loan period with us this season is another story. Centre back's my biggest concern, and we've spent a lot of money in that area. We dropped on an accident with Scales. He was supposed to leave, and through injury, he's got his opportunity and he's taken it, and he's night and day a different player from end of last, from middle to end of last season to now. Certainly from the beginning of last season. So we've landed on one there. But if you told any of us midway through last season that we would be happy with a first choice pairing of Scales and CCV, most Celtic fans would have told you you're at it and you need to be at a higher level. The fact Welsh is ahead of Navrosky's a bit of a concern.
If someone had said to you Scales would win 2 Champions League man of the match at central defence and then get into the team of the week twice, you'd have been like, you're mental. So I think you have to have scope for
absolutely
people improving.
I agree with you on there, but now that they are the first 2 choice, and there's no dispute, they are the first 2 choice. In fact, Scales is on better form than CCV, which again, the thought of those words coming out of my mouth a few months ago. It's just incredible. But that's where we're at. Fair play to the player and the coaching team for getting him to that level. As Brian said, he showed a ton of professionalism to get to that point. And he's made a lot of people eat their words, including myself. I'm quite happy to do so. But if Stephen Welsh is your next choice, potentially, ahead of a guy you paid 4.4 million for in Nawrocki, we've got issues. For me, Welsh is another one who should be done. Like, he's never kicked on. And Trusty, obviously, we spent 6 million on him to replace Scales, and he's going to struggle to replace Scales. So he's probably number 3. But as you said, like, he's going to need time and he's going to need games, and we'll see from there. But for me, we need another centre back, so that it's Scales, CCV, Trusty, and another. If it's not going to be Nawrocki, and clearly Rodgers doesn't fancy him.
What we also, sorry, Gav, we
Yeah,
have to realise we took a lot of pace out of the team. We removed Maeda, who does a lot of tracking back. Kyogo wasn't playing. Kuhn wasn't starting. And CCV has a bit of pace, but that's a lot to take out of the team. Taking 3 of those guys out at once, and Taylor would be fairly fast also.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Is this the boy you were referring to a minute ago, Ian?
Yeah, is it Hammarby, is it?
Hammarby
so,
player,
yeah,
yes,
Hammarby,
Toure, 18-year-old. Do you think there's anything in this, or why is this story cropped up?
I don't know. Apparently, he got transferred. The Swedish season's slightly different, isn't it? I think they're into the second half now. So I think
they're well into that season. That's
So
close to be done.
He came from Ivory Coast. I think he's 18. I think he fits a Rodgers profile of someone who looks like fast, quick, athletic. Apparently his numbers are pretty good, but it's only a first season, so I don't know if 8 million after having just making the move is accurate. But I think the fact that this has come out after Parma's performance like that, maybe shows that they're like, right, okay, this is really the next area that we need to look at, and as Paul was saying, we probably do need that. So.
Alrighty, I'm just. I wonder. Well, let's just have some fun playing with different layouts here for a second. Just take a break from the chat, just so I can see what's the best one. If I do this, it's just the picture, right? If I do this, we're over on that side, so that wouldn't be too bad. I could put the logo back. That makes the picture another contributor. This is fun, isn't it? Oh, that's my favorite.
I prefer the one in the middle, because then at least it depends what the content is, isn't it? Right, but the one in the middle then gives a bit more of a focal point.
That one?
No, the next one that you did that had the contributors around it. Yeah, because then that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Hard to read the text if that's
very hard.
If that's part of it, but anyway, we are live, guys, so maybe we should keep content rolling.
I think this one's not bad, although it's just slightly
for the people listening on a podcast, I think sorry.
Yeah, when this goes out on
this
audio,
and this is effectively what we did before, I think. Okay. All right. Well, for those who are still with us, 220 people still with us. Thanks for your patience. What about names like Balikwisha and Mateus Bogusz? Do you think we're going to revisit those in January, anyone?
Don't think so. I think your man Bogusz had his chance. Don't think we'll go back, especially with it being American, not really. Well, he wasn't American, he was playing in America, he's Polish gentleman, isn't he?
Exactly, and their season will be over by January.
I think the midfield is good now. I think when you look at Bogusz, I think, you kind of say Engels has really come in and, been on fire. Even McCowan's come in and looked really decent. So where would he even get in to that midfield now? So I couldn't see us going back for him. I think his chance is probably gone.
I think it depends where you play him, because he's played a lot of games up front and off the front. So unless there's a consideration that he's going to play as a sort of attacking winger / striker, I'd be surprised, but you never know.
But we're a long way away from this. I mean, this is clearly what this says to me is that we are looking and that we actually have a process in place. So I would take from this confidence that we're making the connections, speaking with people, looking at doing business early doors in January and not being caught out. But I think in terms of, I can see us getting linked with an awful lot of names. Because I think if we're doing our work properly, we will do, because people will talk.
Kaiser's always talking about my lack of tan in Malaysia, just because he's back from Spain on holiday and he was probably out sunning himself. Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly tanned. I've got Celtic Irish under-melanated skin, and when you live somewhere as hot as this, you run about from one aircon environment to another. So there's no sunbathing going on. Let me tell you that. Let's talk about injuries rather than insults. Cameron Carter-Vickers. Here, look at this headline here. Do you think this is a good play on words? Cameron Carter-Vickers to sit out Perth trip, touch and toe for Dortmund.
Keith Jackson, is that you?
It's a Celtic
No, it's
star.
probably not Keith Jackson, because there's no reference to like a cartel or some sort of like thing like that. I think this is a worry. Yeah, this is definitely a worry. I think, CCV is talked about him needing a rest, and he was taking injections. So he's obviously going to take time to recover from that. I would not be so worried about Perth with St Johnstone in such a such disarray. However, I'd definitely be worried about Dortmund. But what's not going to make us worry about Dortmund?
I mean, if he's going to miss one game, Dortmund, do we all agree Dortmund's our hardest game or least likely game to get any points out of? I mean, it's that or Atalanta. Part of me almost thinks, well, I mean, if he's going to miss one game, he may as well miss the one we're probably going to lose. How defeatist is that, Brian?
Well, it depends if it's only one, though. Like, if you're saying it's one and missed that one, but if it's one and he plays it and he knocks him out for longer games, then obviously there's a knock-on effect. But if they think they can get a game out of him without making it too much worse, I'd want him to play the Dortmund game, because I actually think we can get at them in that match. I'm not saying we can go where they go there and win or even draw, but we can make it competitive if we put our strongest lineup out. But equally, I wouldn't risk him if it's a real chance of knocking him out for 5, 6, 7, 8 games or worse.
My name is on the middle screen. Oh yeah, that's true. It says Gav Malaysia in that one. Sorry, it's the first time, so Kaiser's pointing that out. That's true. That's probably not a good place for it. Let's go back to this.
It's still on there.
It's still on there. Oh yeah. Flipping hell. But the only way I can undo that is by taking everyone's names off.
Again,
let's just read the helicopter manual, Gav.
See, the names are all off now. Does that matter? Everyone knows who we are. Would you rather it like that?
Let's just crack on with the show.
Okay. Alistair Johnson, probably not so bad. He'll be back. Nothing to worry about there. Brian?
I wouldn't risk any of those two guys for Perth. We've enough in the bank to beat Perth or beat St Johnstone away. And if CCV is 80%, I wouldn't play him. It's all about the fine margins in the Champions League. Okay, we're not going to really beat Borussia Dortmund, but if we did, we're sitting on 6 points. And if it takes us 9-10 to get through the next, it's a great place. And I would literally be happy if we have one shot on goal, and that's the Arne Engels penalty to win in the last minute. I wouldn't risk anyone at this stage, and Ralston should be good enough to come in for AJ, and if CCV's anyway, and there's anything hanging over him, I wouldn't risk him for any game. I just think that it's all about the fine margins at this stage, and looking at, we've beat St Johnstone 3-1 the last 2 games we've played them, and they're actually worse now than when we did play them. But I'm sure you'll move on to that.
Here's a point from Mahesh. Potential no CCV is a big headache, given that Dortmund's most dangerous player, Adeyemi, hovers a lot on Dortmund's left. So whoever's in that position for us is going to have to be on their game.
Yeah, he started the season well at Adeyemi as well. He's I think he's in amongst the goals and the assists. So I think he's the next big one to come out that system. So yeah, we definitely need AJ, and we probably need CCV. But again, if we're going to take a hit in any game, maybe it's the Dortmund one. I don't know.
Kaiser, just by the way, I get it now. Kaiser was saying good tan that Gav has because my name was appearing under the picture of CCV. But he has questioned my tan in the past. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good. We're all friends together. This great big Celtic world. This is quite funny. I saw this by Gareth Brennan, not on the 20 minutes or so into the Celtic game. Neil Lennon said about Alistair Johnson, he's a tough little hombre. Did anybody else hear that? I heard that. Funny. It's really funny to hear Neil Lennon saying that. Thought that was great. Alrighty then. What do I do now? Do we go back to this? And
yeah, isn't Lenny doing something for the foundation? He's climbing a mountain somewhere.
Nah, he's doing the Camino walk in Spain.
That's right. Anybody done that? Any of our very devout members done that walk, offering up their suffering to our Savior?
To Brendan?
Nah. Nah.
I certainly haven't. I know some people have. They weren't doing it for the saviours, though. They were doing it for the crack.
The crack. All right. Speaking of crack, are we going to have good crack at the weekend? We're going to bang in a whole load of goals at St Johnstone, do we think? Or we're going to have ridiculous scoreline predictions at the end of this conversation? Ian, what do we have to fear from this weekend? What would be a bad outcome?
What would be a bad outcome? Anything that's not a win. I think, look, we should be going there and we should be confident of winning it. Even if we've got a couple of changes at the back, I think it's not really going to come down to our defensive performance. It's going to come as part of us all functioning as an attacking unit. If Kuhn's back in there, if Maeda's back in there and Kyogo's back in there, I'm like fully confident. I think you're alluding to the fact, Gav, that we were all predicting 4-0 against Falkirk. But the caveat to that was that we only thought he was going to make 3 or 4 changes. I think, we're only going to have 1 or 2 changes from the Champions League team against us. I think we should have way too much for St Johnstone. They're in terrible form. So is there anything to fear? I would kind of say, unless they bring in a manager before then and there's like some sort of new manager bounce, else I think they're in a bit of disarray, having sacked the manager. And I think there's been rumours it might be Scott Brown. So if it's Scott Brown, I think they would wait till after.
He's 16-1. I don't think
he's pulled out of it today. Apparently, he had talks with their owner, who I think has actually just agreed to step back because he's had a cancer diagnosis. So obviously,
he's unwell.
Wish him well.
Cancer,
but prior to this, there's an echo. Prior to stepping away, he had chats with some of the candidates, and following that chat, Brown decided to stay where he was, apparently, as the report out this afternoon here, and obviously your time in the morning. So he's out. I'd be surprised if they appoint somebody before Sunday, but you never know. I always had a quick look at their record. They've only won once all season. You've got to go back to the early part of August. I think it was the second game of the season. They beat Killy, 10-man Killy, who had a man sent off after about 10-15 minutes. They beat them 3-0, and they'd have been playing European football on the Thursday night. So I think, they're really poor. Obviously, they got the manager sacked. The last game out, they managed to blow a 3-1 lead in the last 3 or 4 minutes of normal time and 7 minutes of added on. And I watched the highlights of that game. The defending was absolutely atrocious. Every single goal was a shambles. The opener, the centre-back, just passed it straight to their attacker, and they carved them up. They could have been 2 or 3 down before they started to come back. They scored some okay goals. Ross County's defending wasn't great either. Is it Nicky Clark scored 2 free kicks. The second was a peach, actually, to go 3-1 up. The other was, keeper should have probably done better. Maybe don't give a free kick around the edge of the box if you can repeat that. but yeah, their defending from set pieces was appalling. They lost 2 late goals to headers into the crosses into the box. So yeah, I would expect if we play a strong attacking lineup, sort of I don't really care what we do in the back four, and I agree with the guys. We should probably make sure that CCV and AJ are rested give them every chance of the Champions League game. But I definitely still have a few changes, potentially like one in midfield, one up front in the front three, and I still think we'll have enough to go past them comfortably.
NetXG predicts Celtic by 2, according to Mahesh. I think that's probably undercooking it.
Yeah.
If we bang in the goals and pull them apart, run them a bit ragged. Although I do take the point from Anton Rogan's left foot that they're going to be super defensive. Ian?
Yeah, I think we've kind of dealt. I think we've dealt with that better now this season. I think like Hearts were stinking out the place, weren't they? I think this is what he wants. He's specifically tried to develop these patterns of play. I'm forgetting who the last home game was that we struggled in the first. Oh yeah, it was the Bratislava game. We struggled in that first half with just trying to get past them for that second goal. But I think then there's a couple of tweaks and we start to find the spaces. So I think even now, if teams are going to go ultra defensive, I don't think it's an option for them. I think that's why there was such a surprise with Falkirk, because Falkirk are the first team we've come in that haven't played ultra defensive. So whether more teams might, fancy trying to do that, I don't know. But I suspect St Johnstone will just set up defensively, and then it's a case of us trying to break them down. So it'll cut. When will we get the first goal, and then can we get another one? Because when it remains 1-0, it'll just be set piece central. But if we get 1 or 2 goals up, hopefully that means there's an opportunity to rest players. Because I think the priority here may be not getting injuries ahead of the Dortmund game.
Well, the Dortmund game is obviously the big looming fixture. And this is something to get through in the interim, really, let's be honest. If we can get through without any injuries and 3 points, we'd all take that, I would imagine, rather than expecting some sort of scudding. So shall we take a moment to look ahead to the Dortmund match? Brian, the first game was a great success. We all rejoiced. And anyone who tried to inject a note of realism into proceedings was shouted down by all and sundry. Don't you spoil our party, you miserable bastard, and things like that. So, but now that the dust has settled on that performance, we can see that, the quality of the opposition obviously is taking a big leap going into this next game. And what I was thinking about was, because of the expanded competition and the fact that Celtic have been in the old Champions League quite a lot recently, we feel like we ought to be here. And the likes of Slovan Bratislava don't really think that they should be there in their hearts. They're just happy to be participating, But we see that. We see that there are tiers now, and we're maybe not at the very bottom rung of the ladder. There are other weaker teams. So do you think that confidence is going to make us, really give it a go against the big sides in these one-off games?
It's all about confidence. It's all about being positive, and you just never know. It's a game of football, It
is a game of football.
We're due a bit of, I was going to say a bit of luck, but we're due a rub of the green. We've got the squad on paper, and Engels is going back to Germany. He'll have a point to prove. He'll be sitting there going, you could have bought me, you didn't bother. I just think it's bring it on. Let's go for it. Who's going to look forward? Who's the right back for Borussia Dortmund? They're not going to be looking forward to Kyogo, Kuhn, and Maeda coming into the place. You know what I mean? So I think it's a great opportunity. I really do. I don't fear the yellow wall. I don't think it's going to be a cricket score either. I don't think it'll be 4-5-1. I really do think we could nick it 1-0. I mean, one shot on goal, Engels penalty.
The other thing is Rodgers talked about practicing the system against the better quality of Chelsea and Manchester City. So this is kind of in their teams. Now, I know Dortmund are up and running, but I think the philosophy this season, and we've talked about it on the pod before, is to try and perfect this system and play it against anyone else. Much the same way Falkirk will have taken heart, because Falkirk kept true to their system and they gave us a bit of a scare. They'll take a lot of heart from that. I think we can take a lot of heart from the fact that our system, even though it was pre-season, we challenged Man City, we challenged Chelsea, we beat them, and we gave Bratislava a cuffing. So I think, we've got to have confidence in that system. And what I would expect is, see if we do actually manage to take anything from it, then I think we'd be a lot more confident going into the other games, because it would really be sort of a real check mark saying, look, this system is working and it can do something. Because Dortmund, as good as they are and as tough a team as they are, they're not a Bayern Munich, a Real Madrid, these sort of teams. They're a very, very good top side, but it's not like we're massively outgunned. We've still got very good players. We've still got a very good system, and who knows what can happen. It won't be for being unprepared. Put it that way. It'll probably be quality might make the difference, but I wouldn't say that we're going to be completely outclassed. Could be sat here in a week.
Who's our weak link? Who's our weak link going into this game? For me, it's Hatate. Is our weak link going into this game?
I don't think he'll play.
I don't think he'll play. I think Bernardo is nailed on for that.
I think Bernardo plays in Dortmund, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll have to defend more. We'll need somebody who's more disciplined, technical. I absolutely think Bernardo starts. He was unlucky to get dropped after the derby. He was the only midfielder that put in a consistent performance for the whole game against Falkirk. For me, I don't like. You could, of the four midfielders that are first choice for, I'm happy with any 3 from 4 in all domestic games, pretty much. And you want Engels in for the big games, obviously. But the other 3 for 2 positions, I don't really mind who plays in most of those games. Back the manager to get that decision right. I think Bernardo got a lot of minutes in the Champions League last year, and there was a good reason for, and he didn't get as many minutes in the Premier League, and there's a good reason for that, because Rodgers trusts him in those big games to be disciplined and play his position. Hatate on his day is a world beater, but when he's not on it, he gives the ball away cheaply. He's not as hardworking. He's not as disciplined. And I said there was a chance that Bernardo could start against Slovan Bratislava. In hindsight, obviously, a game that was winnable, that we were going to have to be on the front foot, it made sense for it to be Hatate. So stand corrected on that. But I think there's a real case for Paulo Bernardo in what I will always call the Westfalen Stadium, not whatever the stupid branding they've got on it these days.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's a decent point by Anton Rogan's left foot, but maybe we're not looking for a magician, particularly in this game.
I think the kind of passes that he puts on, you're not going to find a bigger Hatate fan than me. I really rate Hatate. I really like Hatate, but I think the benefits of him being a magician are also the downsides. And I think when we come up against that better quality, because you've got to remember as well, Hatate's also not coming up against Dortmund's. He's coming up against St Johnstone's and Hearts and things like that as well. So he's kind of got that cushion of a slightly lower level. He disappears. I really rate Hatate, and I just think some games aren't suited for him. And Bernardo, I think we were talking about it the other day. He's the captain of Portugal under-21s. He's got vast experience. He was trusted for lots of big games and didn't let us down. The only criticism of Bernardo is sometimes he's functional and doesn't stand out. But when we're playing away against Dortmund, I'll take someone who's functional and not putting in a 7. And instead of someone who could put in a 5 or an 8 or a 9. Do you know what I mean? We need to kind of choose the consistency, choose the reliability.
Keys to success for Celtic are slow down Dortmund's transition, or at least match them. Celtic has to stay with them in the last 20 minutes. They score a lot of late goals, but 3 past what we all have to say is Brugge now. We used to say Bruges, didn't we?
Bruges, yeah.
I'll still say Bruges, Gav.
Yes, so will I.
Say Bruges.
I think the game will be very important. Like I said, Forest coming on for the last 20 minutes. Hopefully, if it's 0-0 or even 1-0 down, trying to salvage a draw. But the squad will play. It will be a game for the squad, you know. And if we get 60 minutes out of Kyogo, and then put Big Ida on for the last half an hour or so, you know, we just all need to be on our game, and we need a bit of luck. We need AJ not to break his leg in the first 10 minutes, you know. It's
or somebody
you know,
else's.
or someone
I
else.
mentioned that, Brian. You're jinxing him there.
Sorry, AJ.
I think to Gav's point, though, sorry, you go.
No, just say it's not Real Madrid we're playing. It's not going like it's Dortmund. You know, it's not
Yeah,
like
they're good.
They're good. But
Champions League runners-up last season, Dortmund.
They're good.
Oh, they didn't win it. Did they?
Well, no, they were second.
They've only won it the same amount of times as we've won it. So,
well,
No, so it's 50-50 chance.
50-50
toss of a coin. I actually think we've got as good a chance in that kind of game as we've had for a long time. Like, you know, Barcelona started the season like a steam train, and they're the only side that was rated in that pot one lower than Leipzig and Dortmund. So we did get the best two teams that, you know, to be competitive for us. To your earlier point, Gav, how we played against City and Chelsea, I know it was only pre-season friendlies, but they played a high line and they tried and attacked us. They tried to attack us, and our speed in behind was lightning. Those goals, you know, that we scored with Kuhn and Kyogo getting in behind, that's the kind of thing that Dortmund should be worried about us. And they might not have seen very much of it because that's not what we come against typically. And even Slovan Bratislava played quite deep. So this will probably be the first game since those preseason games where we probably get an opportunity to spring those players. We saw a little bit of it against Falkirk because Falkirk did come out, and obviously Engels played that great ball through for Kuhn to get Dart in behind. But, you know, I'm quite excited by the Dortmund game, to be honest. I think, you know, we've gone into these bigger games in previous years and we've hoped to just hang on in there and not get scudded, and we've taken quite a few scuddings. I think we've got a fighting chance in this one. I'm not saying that, you know, we'll get a great result, but I think we've got as good a chance as we've had in many a year.
Yeah. Brian asked the question there, what's our greatest weakness? No,
yeah.
hold
I
on.
think we've
you were
ironed
saying,
out,
like, what's our weakness? What should we be worried about? I'm continuing to answer that question, which is nobody's been talking recently about how weak we are down the left side in defence for a while. And we know that problem hasn't gone away. I mean, Scales has done well so far this season. You're about to disagree in the strongest possible terms.
I'm going to disagree with you because I will say that Rodgers talked about working with Taylor in a different way and allowing him to do different things that suit his skill set. Now, Dortmund's always going to be a big test, but I think Taylor is much improved in last season, and I think
going
that's
forward,
why.
Perhaps.
No,
he's always been good going forward. So.
Yeah, I think he's been good defensively, a lot better positioned. I think the same of Scales. I think Scales has started really well again. I don't have his now. Don't get me wrong. Do I want to upgrade the left back position? Yes, because I think Taylor's height and pace are still an issue. But I think he's making a lot more correct decisions. Positionally, he's a lot better. So he's improved a lot of aspects. So I'm not as worried. Yes, I'd like to upgrade it, but I'm not as worried. And I think the reason you're not hearing about the left-hand side, Gav, is because it's not been constantly exposed. And at times last season, everyone was chucking stuff down the left because they knew that was a weakness. Not been the case this season. Not even in Europe, where Bratislava were strong on that side, they had no joy. That was their one kind of outlet they were meant to have. So,
on top of that, Maeda, his work rate covers that side so well. So you've got a first line of defense in Maeda before you ever get to Taylor. So it's fast transitions over the top of the midfield into that area you want to worry about. It's getting him isolated one-on-one with a dangerous, fast, technical winger. But even AJ would suffer on the other side if that's the case. Yeah, he's probably a stronger defender, but he gets squared up, and the best wingers in Europe will give him a torrid time as well. So I agree with Ian. I think it's not as much of an issue. And, you see, and yes, there was 8 changes, and, not much support around him, both inside and centre back and in front of him and wing. But Vi had a real torrid time, and you saw how big a step down that was, admittedly, in one performance from the usual performance that Taylor makes. So, yeah, I think it's about getting the overall defensive unit right instead of getting players isolated one-on-one. It's about working better as a team, and I think we look better and more organised than we did this time last year.
And individual errors last year, getting players sent off. Even Joe Hart had a couple of wee wobbles last year, in terms of could he have done better and with some of the shots, Home, Lagerbielke getting sent off. I think Brendan's ironed those things out, and that gives us a fighting chance. Who the weak link, there's nobody going to go in and put the boot in. There's nobody going to go in and make a sloppy pass back to Schmeichel. And Schmeichel is good. He's a good shot stopper. So I think we've given ourselves a really good chance of getting a result.
It's just the stuff that's happened in the past. And a few of the guys in the comments have mentioned it, and Gav was flicking them up. Stuff like concentration, focus. Our biggest weakness is, probably has been we've had multiple incidents happen back to back. So sending off, lost a goal, sucker punches that just add up and make it really difficult to come back. So I like the first 11 and even some of the backup. I fully back. It's probably, how much depth have we got? How much depth is going to be needed?
And the other thing is Rogers talked about people agreeing that there's the kind of the defence and that kind of pressing and defence and things. I mentioned in the last pod, he's made a big call. He's mentioned it a couple of times about how everyone's agreed to do certain things, and hopefully it's that agreement and it's that joined up thinking and that kind of clarity of everyone kind of doing the work that will see us maybe reduce those mistakes and errors. I mean, we'd have to be really unlucky to have that's a Maeda one, because I think Maeda was the outlier. That was a ridiculous decision. But the other ones, like we said, there was a couple of poor decision making instance, and I think that hopefully whatever agreement they've made, that covers up for it, compensates for it.
A lot of talk in the chat about casseroles. We'll not go on to that subject, Brian, unless you want to, particularly.
Casseroles?
Yeah, and sausages.
I was just going to say, so this is Brendan's stage. This is why he came back to test himself at this level. And bring it on. Now, saying that, if we play them next season, probably get chin, but as the stars align, let's make hay and all that. Anyway,
well, they got scudded at the weekend. Stuttgart beat them 5-1. They've had a modest start to the season. They've won 2, drawn. I think they've won 2, drawn 2, and lost 1 or 2. So, yeah, I think it's good a time as any to get them.
Well, we didn't even do a score prediction for the St Johnstone game yet. Do we want to do that, saying this is the St Johnstone preview rather than the Borussia Dortmund preview?
3-0.
3-0.
I
was going to say 3-0 as well, so I'll go 4-0.
It's okay. Higher.
Higher the fall. Stats tell me 3-1, but I'm hoping for Casper's clean sheet, so I'm going to agree with the boys 3-0. Kuhn, Kyogo, and Forrest are my 3 scores.
Well, I think the number 5 is in the air, so I'm going to go for that. You just can't stop scoring. Scoring for fun. It's a delight.
It's like you in your school days, Gav. Can't stop scoring.
Oh, you mean with a Barge League? Or?
That's what I meant, the Barge League.
Oh, dear. Okay. Now, often we finish up with Celtic social media stuff. And
Gav, something you haven't done is anyone watching, like and subscribe, help us out. New channel, all that. You've in the confusion of flying the helicopter, you've forgotten our usual like and subscribe pattern. So everyone, stop what you're doing now. Like, subscribe, help us out.
Yeah, we didn't even get a from somewhere to somewhere intro as well.
No, I didn't do that either.
Oh, Gav.
I'm trying to
Shambles.
keep it simple.
Well,
Trying to give myself less to do. It's easy for you guys. You just show up and blather away. I'm the one who's trying to, juggle 5 balls.
easy for us to come up with erudite.
Wouldn't
We
go
don't
the
need to
first
know about
time.
your medical conditions, Gav.
Freak
All right.
off. Oh,
So here's a little something. This was something that I saw. The Celtic Supporters Club of Switzerland's newsletter. They're also known as the Fondue Fenians, which is quite amusing. And I opened their newsletter, and it was about, the Celtic song, Hail, Hail, the Celts Are Here, which has always troubled me a little bit, some of the lyrics of it, being a songwriter myself, lads. And, Hail, Hail, the Celts Are Here, what the hell do we care? I've always found that very odd. I mean, you're there, you're watching them, you're supporting the team. You obviously do care. You've written a song about it. You're singing that song. You must care to some extent. Anyway, in the Celtic Supporters Club of Switzerland newsletter was this article saying the famous Glasgow Celtic song for It's a Grand Old Team to Play For was first sung by the supporters at the Paradise in Belfast, 1921. The lyrics were slightly different back then and were later changed and added to again and again. The melody comes from a British marching tune that could be heard Sunday after Sunday at Celtic Park. The original text reads, "What a grand old team to play for, what a grand old cup to win. When you read the history, it's enough to make your heart's blood thrill. We don't care if the money's right or wrong, damn the hair we care. For we only know that there's going to be a match and the Belfast Celtic will be there." Now, maybe you guys know all this, but this is all a bit of a journey
This
for
sounds
me,
AI generated, Gav.
trying to piece this together. But listen, the bit I take from this is, we don't care if the money's right or wrong. Damn the hair we care. Or what the hell do we care? That makes sense. We're not here for the money. We're here for the sport and the jolly. So that maybe explains where that bit came from. And then also this week, I saw Lisbon Lion, who's going to be on the show quite soon, on Twitter. Morning all, it's hard to believe that the Celtic song was considered inflammatory by the police. Originally an American marching song. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. It was first recorded in 1961 by Glenn Daly and is still heard on match days. Okay, so this is Hail, Hail, the Gang's All Here as part of an album from back then. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and I'm going to play you a little video because I looked it up on YouTube. The Hail, Hail, the Gang's All Here. And this is what I found. Come on. Now, how was the audio for you? Was there echoing audio in the song there for you?
That was okay.
That was okay, because I could hear it sort of twice. All right. So Hail, Hail, the Gang's All Here. Clearly what's happening, now correct me if I'm wrong, is there's two songs, two very separate songs that have somehow been merged together, which is the song that Belfast Celtic originally sang, and then the first bit that was tagged onto that, which was the Hail, Hail, the Celts Are Here. And the What the Hell Do We Care was taken from the bottom bit and also added to the top, which is why we sing Hail, Hail, the Celts Are Here, what the hell do we care? which makes very little sense. But what they don't care about is that whether the money's good or bad. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable explanation?
It sounds plausible, Gav. I think this is like one of those ones that, you know how you get someone who's been to uni and they've done a degree and they're like, yeah, my dissertation was on the origin of the Celtic song and how it was like merged from like an American war thing. It sounds like that. You could be right, but I think it needs further investigation. What I would say is, I said you would have had some things in common with then Gav, guys dancing about with their swords. That reminded me of you.
You beat me for the first time.
Bit of jazz drum as well.
I crossed swords with Stan Collymore one night in the Fly in Belfast. True story.
Actually crossed swords with him, like, or just stood next to him at a urinal?
No, I stood. Two of us were in
because
there.
crossing swords is like the streams touch it, like Ghostbusters. I'm not sure that's happening.
The case. You were stood there looking. I mean,
yeah,
I imagine you came out of that. I imagine you came out of that looking worse, to be honest. Just a guess.
Yeah, that's for another.
Whilst we're on about
big Stan, yeah.
Well, we're talking about vague celebrities that you've had a piss next to. Kyle Faulkner of The View. Just in a bar just outside Benicassim Festival, I was dressed fully as 70s Fat Elvis.
Did he have the same jeans on that he's had on for several days?
I think he thought like it was early morning, like it was 10, 11 o'clock in the morning or midday. So the festival was just getting started and he was stood next to Vegas era Elvis. He did a bit of a double take, so I think he probably thought his hangover was worse than he realised. But yeah, probably did have the same jeans on, Gav. Well done.
Craig Young, thank you for bringing it back to the topic at hand. Your great-great-granddad was the first to sing that at Celtic Park. Really? Somebody, if anyone knows anything about that song or knows it, how it all came about,
or if
it'd be
anyone's
very
done a
interesting to
dissertation
know.
on it for their degree.
It's interesting to know because I've always been confused by Hail Hail the Celts are here. What the hell do we care?
Well, it's the same kind. Surely it's the same kind of ethos as some of the over and over, faithful through and through. Win, lose or draw, all that malarkey. Like there was all sorts of that nonsense back in the day. Like you don't stand for that anymore, do you? Like win every game, no messing. But there was a lot of that, like and it's right. Support the club through thick and thin. It's kind of that mentality, isn't it?
Sorry.
John Holmes. I don't know who John Holmes is.
Neither do I.
Brian.
Jonathan Holmes.
Who's John Holmes? Never heard of him.
Oh, come on, Gav,
Huh?
don't be silly.
Is he an actor? Is he?
He was the king of. He was Long Dong Silver. King Dong.
Yeah, I mean, he was
Pirates of the Caribbean,
actor, wasn't he?
Boogie Nights. He was in. What was allegedly? He was a bit of a star back in the day.
Poor Brian squirming awkwardly in his seat. He's been put in the position of everyone thinking that he's the only one who knows who John Holmes is. Of course, that's not true.
He's Eamon Holmes' brother, isn't he? Eamon Holmes' brother.
Yeah.
Now, what are you talking
about? Did you see the memes going on about Eamon Holmes in his wheelchair?
With, Phoenix Night.
Not long now. Things I'm going to do to you.
When I get you up those stairs.
That is pretty funny.
Oh Christ! I've got to go on a network event in about half an hour here.
Yes, well, we've just gone over time, so let's wrap it up on that. Thank you very much, everyone in the chat, for bearing with us in this experimental first episode with our new software. I hope you had as much fun watching the picture change as we did changing it. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen, as always. We've got a couple of new interesting faces going to be showing up in the coming weeks. So you may have to sort of take this time, a few of you, to sort of sit on the bench and recover and, let the metatarsals heal. Really. Brian's troublesome metatarsal. All right. Let's wrap it up then. Until next time, everyone. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail.